So you want to know more about Mormon polygamy. As a scholar of American history, my goal for this channel is to bridge the worlds of academic scholarship and the general public, providing answers to frequently asked questions and especially to discuss the context that led us to our present moment. One of the ways I want to do this is a new series with videos every Friday titled So You Want to Know More About Blank, where I take a particular topic and I tell you about what scholars have said about it, what the key lessons you can take away, and recommend where you can be doing your own reading, both in books that I recommend you checking out from the library or purchasing a copy, or in articles that you can read for free if you just search for the article's title online. And when thinking about what topic I could launch this series with, immediately I realized I wanted to discuss Mormon polygamy, because this is the topic, as a scholar of Mormonism, that gets raised more often than any other. Even though the Latter-day Saint Church now is wedded to the idea of what it calls traditional marriage, though as I've discussed in a previous video that the proclamation on the family and the defense of the nuclear husband, wife, and children model in a patriarchal institution is a modern invention, most of the general public still associates the Mormon tradition with polygamy, a practice that it allegedly gave up in 1890, although I'll get into the complications with that. And it still causes issues and raises questions. Just earlier this year, the LDS Church released new curriculum for children in cartoon form that included a discussion of polygamy that raised a lot of concern in how it was teaching and packaging the idea of polygamy for others. So let's dig into the various eras of Mormon polygamy. I'll talk about the key things you need to know, as well as point you to books and articles if you want to know more. So with all that out of the way, let's dig in. Now, if you want a firm understanding of Mormon polygamy, you have to understand its origins. And while there is an unfortunately growing conspiracy that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy, the universal scholarly consensus is that Joseph Smith inaugurated the practice of polygamy. But while that consensus is there are still questions on when Joseph Smith took his first plural wife, how he did it, what type of ideas he taught to others, and the general development. Some argue that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy in the 1830s in Kirtland with Fanny Alger, while others, including myself, believe that polygamy didn't really start until after 1839 when the Mormons moved to Nauvoo. I've previously argued, including in books, that I believe the Fanny Alger story is more of a story of an affair than polygamy, but maybe that's a topic for another video. But if you want to understand Joseph Smith and polygamy, there's a few sources to go to. Now, you might immediately think that I'm going to recommend Richard Bushman's Rough Stone Rolling, a cultural biography of Joseph Smith, which is a phenomenal book. It's one of my favorite books in Mormon history. Polygamy is not its strength, though. In the more than 400 pages it devotes to Joseph Smith's life, only about 5 deal with polygamy, which is unfortunately one of the shortcomings of an otherwise phenomenal book. Thankfully, that's going to be corrected later this year in June when Yale University Press publishes John Turner's Joseph Smith, The Rise and Fall of an American Prophet. John Turner, many of you know from his phenomenal biography of Brigham Young, as well as his book on the Mormon Jesus, his book on the Pilgrims. He's a great scholar, not a Mormon. And I've actually read an advanced copy of the book, and I strongly recommend it. And polygamy is one of its key insights. He traces a story of Joseph Smith's quest for more power and authority and doctrinal radicalism. And he really does well in capturing what I see as Joseph Smith's vision of polygamy, as well as the experiences of the women surrounding him. You might remember in John Turner's Brigham Young biography, he spends a lot of pages reconstructing the lives of Brigham Young's wives. He does the same thing here with Joseph Smith's wives. So you should pre-order John Turner's biography. It's that good. But speaking of teasing out the lives of Joseph Smith's wives, Todd Compton's classic book, In Sacred Loneliness, The Plural Wives of Joseph Smith, is not so much a history of Joseph Smith's polygamy as it is a collective biography of the 33 or so women who were likely sealed to Joseph Smith as plural wives. It centers their stories, it centers their words, and it's really excellent and riveting. And if you want to get to the documents themselves, Signature Books, the publisher that produced In Sacred Loneliness, just a couple of years ago, put out the second volume, which is focused on the documents. And this is a thick book. Look at how big this is. So if you want to read the documents related to Joseph Smith and polygamy itself, I strongly recommend that book. But again, if you don't want a book, if you want an article, Todd Compton published an article in the wonderful journal Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought, titled A Trajectory of Plurality, an overview of Joseph Smith's 33 wives, which gets into the mental and theological arguments behind Joseph Smith's polygamy that I strongly recommend. I don't agree with all of his conclusions, but then again, very few historians agree with each other, but this is a wonderful starting point. Now, I would be loath if I didn't also take an opportunity here to say that I wrote a book that details Joseph Smith's practice of polygamy, Kingdom Nauvoo, The Rise and Fall of a Religious Empire on the American Frontier, which looks at the entire Nauvoo story as a moment of democratic crisis. And I try to explain how Joseph Smith's introduction of and practice of polygamy fit into this broader cultural dispute over authority, gender, equality, democracy, that all led to Joseph Smith's death. And by the way, if you like this type of analysis, please make sure to like this video as well as subscribe to my channel, because there's a lot more good stuff coming. All right, let's next move to the next stage of Mormon polygamy. If Joseph Smith's secretive practice of polygamy is the first phase of the larger story, the second phase is once the Mormons move out to the Mountain West, to Utah, led by Brigham Young, and they announce to the world that polygamy was one of their foundational doctrines and that it had to be practiced in order to reach the celestial kingdom. What's important to know about Utah polygamy was how diverse and varied the experiences are. It depended on who you married, where you lived, what you believed in. That would determine what polygamy was like for you. The best book that captures the diversity of the Mormon polygamous experience is Laurel Ulrich's A House Full of Female, Plural Marriage and Women's Rights in Early Mormonism, 1835 to 1870. Ulrich is one of the best historians of America, period. And this is her attempt to dissect the written records from Mormon women themselves, to unpack their stories, to unpack their beliefs and their experiences. It is a tapestry of weaving lots of people together. Speaking of a tapestry, if you don't want to get the book, but I strongly recommend you do, you can get a preview of that of the book's argument in Ulrich's article, An American Album, 1857. You can Google it and find a free copy online, where she takes a very precise moment, 1857, and a precise artifact, a quilt that was woven by a Salt Lake City Relief Society, to tease out the story of all the women who put it together and their experiences in polygamy in terms of gender patriarchy, in terms of sexuality, in terms of women's religious expressions. It is a wonderful historical example of microhistory teasing out broader stories. And also, if you're into the demographic data of how many Mormons were married in plural marriages, how many were descended from polygamy, the best book on the quantifiable data of polygamy is Catherine Daines's More Wives Than One, Transformation of the Mormon Marriage System, 1840 to 1910. It's a case study of the Manti, Utah region, and it really teases out both the numbers of polygamy as well as individual stories. One thing that many people don't realize about Mormon polygamy was how central it was in the development of American conceptions of religious liberty, because Mormons claimed that polygamy was within their rights as American citizens to practice, that it was a freedom of expression. Of course, the federal government disagreed and they outlawed polygamy and tried to prosecute polygamists. That legal story was a crucial moment in the development of American law. especially in regards to religious liberty. If you want to know more about that story, Sarah Berenger Gordon's The Mormon Question, Polygamy and Constitutional Conflict in 19th Century America is essential. It's one of the best history books ever written, I'd argue, because it shows the development of American conceptions of federal control, individual liberty, and religious expression, showing that the 1877 Reynolds Decision, in which the Supreme Court ruled that Mormons had the right to believe polygamy but not practice polygamy, is what laid the foundation for all judicial decisions on freedom of religion ever since. If you don't want to get the book, although again you should, you can read Christine Talbot's article, The Church Family in 19th Century America, Mormonism and the Public-Private Divide, which summarizes an excellent book by Christine Talbot about polygamy in American political and legal culture. But what about the end of polygamy? Or should I say the ends of polygamy? Because polygamy never really goes away. And the odyssey of how the LDS institution stopped granting ecclesiastical support for polygamy is one of the most riveting stories in American history. You heard me right, because Mormons, devoutly believing that polygamy was their religious liberty and protected practice, tried to disobey federal law. They went on the run. They were thrown in jail, forcing church leaders eventually in 1890 to disavow the practice. Although, as many of you know, the practice continued on. So if you want to know about this story, a great overview of the decisions that led to the 1890 Manifesto, as it's called, the church statement issued by the prophet of the time, Wilford Woodruff, saying the church is no longer practicing polygamy. You can find that in Thomas Alexander's article, The Odyssey of a Latter-day Prophet, Wilford Woodruff and the Manifesto of 1890. Alexander actually wrote an award-winning biography of Wilford Woodruff, if you want to know the larger story, but that article just focuses on the 1890 Manifesto and all the politics surrounding it. But, as I mentioned, Mormons did not stop practicing polygamy there, including church leaders who continued to sanction the practice in secret because they believed it was essential for salvation. The best book on that topic is B. Carmen Hardy's in Sacred Solemn Covenant, the Mormon Polygamous Passage, which tells the 2-decade story of how the institution came from secretly approving plural marriages to eventually trying to crack it down, mostly due to external pressure and internal dissent. And the classic article on this topic that definitively documented the extent of post-polygamous sealings among church leaders is D. Michael Quinn's dialogue article, LDS Church Authority and New Plural Marriages, 1890 to 1904. Just that decade and a half tells a riveting story. It's nearly book length in itself, so warn yourself. It's like 130 pages with hundreds of footnotes, but it's essential reading. And by the way, Michael Quinn nearly got fired from his job at BYU for publishing that article, if you want to understand how controversial it was and how dire the stakes remained within the LDS institution. But what about the fundamentalist movement? That group that captures so much of the national attention because they're wearing their prairie dresses, they're still believing in polygamy, and they're defying federal law. Well, there has sadly not been a scholarly academic monograph on the origins and rise of fundamentalism. There have been a few really good books that are used as resources, whether they be the book by Brian Hales or the one I really like by Craig Foster and Marianne Watson on American polygamy. But the book I'm going to really recommend is Christina Rossetti's Joseph Musser, A Mormon Fundamentalist, which is a very brief biography of one of the most influential early Mormon fundamentalist leaders and his actions. And you can also read a brief overview of the topic in the article by the same author, Dr. Christina Rossetti, one of the best historians on fundamentalism, titled Hysteria Excommunicatis, Loyalty Oaths, Excommunication, and for the Forging of a Mormon Identity, which focuses on the 1930s and how the LDS Church tried to stamp out the fundamentalist movement, but in reality, the fundamentalist movement was born in response to that opposition. Then Many are interested in the modern day media depiction of fundamentalists, which has gotten a lot of attention. So I recommend Janet Benyon's Polygamy in Primetime Media, Gender, and Politics in Mormon Fundamentalism. It digs into the HBO series Big Love, Sister Wives, all the documentaries and TV shows that look at these Mormon polygamists as a fascinating cultural obsession. Now, one final book plug. I also wrote the book American Zion, A New History of Mormonism. You can see the cover here, which is a general survey of the faith tradition, and polygamy is a dominant through line throughout the entire story, whether it be how the church practiced it in the 19th century, how it slowly evolved away from it and practiced it in secret at the end of the century and beginning of the 20th century, and how the church responded to the growing fundamentalist movement up until the present, because polygamy remains a constant thorn in the side of the Mormon tradition, a live option in their theology, and something that requires a lot of dissecting, and these books I highlighted help to do so. Please like this video, share it with others, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because digging into these topics is the type of nerdy stuff I love, and I hope you love it too, because these books, these articles, these historical questions give us a lot of context for the present and help us understand the world around us.